4, and we are live. And welcome, everyone. It is 1 minute past the hour. We're getting these started even earlier every time. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Rick Larson, who's going to be talking all about bullseye shooting. This was originally scheduled to be taught by our Oregon chapter president, Richard God, Mike, can you pronounce his last name for me?
Richard Lidzbarski.
Thank you. Richard, who I love very much, but I can never pronounce his name. But unfortunately, he's just too essential and has not been able to have the time to do it. He might join as the class progresses, so we might get a little guest spot. But Rick Larson is an instructor here in Massachusetts. He has been a chapter member for a while. We just got him certified on our platform for our classes. And he's going to tell us all about Intro to Bullseye Shooting tonight. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Rick, and you're going to turn off my video. Oh, hold on. I keep forgetting to do this. If you have questions, drop them in chat. One of our moderators will pick them up. We've got Mike Ross, wave, and Lonnie Weissman, who's turned his video off. One of us will pick up the questions. We may not get it right away, so give us a second. We'll get to a point where Rick is, maybe not mid-sentence. We'll ask it or we'll save it for shortly later in the presentation. But it's a multimedia presentation. We got some slides, and Rick's got some props, and he's going to tell us all about how to do bullseye shooting. Rick, it is all yours.
Well, I don't know if it was all about how to do it, but I was going to throw out some ideas, and I will start with a summary. And the summary goes as follows. Bullseye pistol is a sport where you can brag about your humility and prove you have diminished your ego by beating everyone else, shooting a gun that looks like it was designed for the last Star Wars movie. Now, what I would ask of you is, in the comments section, I would love to get a read of how many people have never done bullseye shooting, know a little bit about it, or anyone who's an old hand. I'd love to kind of get a feel of to who I've got with me.
Got a bunch of never done it. Never done it, never done it.
Cool. All right.
Never done it, never done it, never don't do it, never barely heard of it. I think you got some newbies. So it's all yours.
Awesome. Bud. All right, let's go ahead and kick it over to the PowerPoint for just a moment, if we may.
I can do that right now. One moment, please, while I get that.
Will I see that?
You should. Share screen. PowerPoint. If everybody can see the screen, let me know. I'm going to go ahead and
make it bigger.
Biggin it.
Bigger. You're bigging it. That looks nice. It's big.
Yeah. All set. Go for it.
All right. So, bullseye is also known as precision pistol, formerly known as conventional pistol. Is a shooting sport in which participants shoot handguns at paper targets at fixed distances and time limits. Bullseye in its current format began around the 1930s. Emphasis is on accuracy and precision. The sport is primarily popular in the United States and Canada. Bullseye pistol was the inspiration for the International Shooting Sports Foundation 25-meter standard pistol event. Pistol shooting has been a sport at the Olympic Games since the first modern games in 1896 in Athens. Can we switch slides, please? For many, bullseye pistol is the epitome of marksmanship. To stand one-handed and put a group the size of a dime on a target the size of a tomato can that is, in most cases, 50 feet away. In truth, when compared to action shooting, bullseye pistol tends to attract a more mature crowd. Slide, please. And I'm sorry about the light there in the middle.
The glare.
Yes, it was a picture I saw at another club, and it spoke to me because a lot of us are older, but I think this is for the same reason that Tai Chi attracts the older set, while Kung Fu draws those with a bit more energy. So that's kind of where people think bullseye comes from. I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like. But let's come back to me, and I'm going to switch gears for just a moment. And while this is the Liberal Gun Club, and I'm going to jump out on a limb and say that most everybody knows the 3 rules, but I'm just going to cover them very quickly because not that long ago, I figured out a way to describe the 3 rules so I will never forget them, and I wanted to share that with you. I'm going to use this CERT pistol. We have the CERT pistol that Liberal Gun Club has available for people.
Well, there's a discount code, LGC 2020, I believe.
LGC 2020, yeah.
That is correct.
Discount. Gives you I think it's a 10% discount off of retail, and
the club gets
a little credit. Yeah.
The club gets a 10% kickback. Yeah, a little bit of commission. Yeah.
So it's a nice pistol. But all that aside, what I wanted to talk about was the 3 rules. If you remember the 3 rules, the number 1 rule. Actually, let's look at it in terms of the pistol itself. If you have the front of the pistol, the middle of the pistol, and the rest of the pistol, the handle. And if you look at those 3 pieces of the pistol, it's insanely easy to remember the 3 rules. Remember, the first rule is always keep the barrel pointed in a generally safe direction. And you look at the front of the pistol, the muzzle, and by looking at the muzzle, that will remind you of the first rule. The second rule is always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready, alongside the frame until you're ready to shoot. And if you look at the middle of the pistol, it's easy to remember the second rule. The third rule is always remember that you are in control of the weapon, and if you use negligently, you can injure or kill yourself or someone else. So if you look at the bottom of the pistol, it's very easy to remember the 3 rules. Middle rule, finger on the frame. First rule, generally safe direction. Third rule, remember you're in charge. Sounds good?
Sounds great. That's actually a very clean way to describe it. And for folks who are probably going to drop into chat, well, what about the 4th rule? That's another class. But we've been teaching this as the 3 rules. And if you violate any, more than one of them, then you're likely to have a negligent event. So, all set.
Actually, you would have maybe a negligent discharge, but if you follow at least one of the 3 rules, you're generally going to be okay. That said, let's move along. Let's talk about Bullseye pistol itself. What happens in a match? A match is very stylized or very formal, group of people, and my experience with a match, I'll just touch on where I come from. A few years ago, I joined a gun club. My brother had given me his double action revolver from when we were growing up. It was a Harrington Richardson 929 made in Gardner, Massachusetts. And I wanted to go shoot pistol, and Bullseye was available to me. So I showed up with this revolver, and I was welcomed with open arms. Everybody was happy to help me as long as I was safe and roughly in the same direction as the target that I was supposed to hit. They were happy to have me. Even if I had crossfired at some other's target, I was probably going to be forgiven. That said, I was lucky to get on paper because it was a revolver. But I had, people were more than happy to explain the sport to me. The sport is like this. There are 3 stages. There's slow fire stage, there's timed fire, and rapid fire. Each stage is 10 shots. Each shot is worth 10 points. You have 3 different targets. So you put up a target for slow fire, you put a target for timed fire, and a target for rapid fire. The slow fire target looks like this. Okay, and I took the liberty of putting some holes on it. Because all our ranges are closed, I actually did that with a drill. Quarter-inch
and we can see that just fine, by the way.
Okay, good. And notice the rings on the slow fire are fairly close together. Now, if I come in here with the time fire, notice the rings are a little bit bigger. All right. Now, slow fire, you have 10 minutes to put 10 rounds on paper. And the paper is the fairly small circles. And each circle, the center circle is 10 points, then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and then nothing for if you get outside the rings. 10 points off. On the timed and rapid fire, timed fire, which is the second string, you take your slow fire target and you replace it with a new timed fire target. And there's a person that calls that line, and I'll explain what the calls sound like. The time fire, you have 20 seconds to put 5 rounds on paper twice. So the way it goes for slow fire, and I did a recording of it. I don't know whether you're going to be able to hear it or not. Let me see the shut off. Hang on a second. I'm going to try it, and if not, if you don't hear it very well on this, I'll just say what it was. If I can get it to turn on here. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to try this, and let me know if you, Ed, let me know if you can.
Got it.
You know what? The battery died.
Oh,
I'll just tell you what it goes. I'll just tell you what it said. So in the beginning, the person that's in charge of calling the line, that person will say, "This is the slow fire gallery course, 10 rounds in 10 minutes. The first 5 loaded on my command, the second 5 at will. With 5 rounds, load. At which point the people that are on the line will put 5 rounds in a magazine in their pistol. Then the person calling the line will say, "Is the line ready?" That person is in charge of looking around and making sure that everybody is ready. Then he'll say, "The line is ready." And then it continues. Ready on the right, ready on the left, ready on the firing line. Then there's a 3-second pause, and you'll hear a buzz or a beep or a klaxon, which indicates that you're clear to fire. You don't want to fire before that. That's wrong. Most local matches, there's no issues. They're not going to really penalize you if you're, half a second before, especially on timed and rapid. But on slow fire, there's no reason because you have all day basically. And
Hey,
so
Rick, I have a question. I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a question. It's not actually a question from the audience this time, so we're not pretending.
Okay.
Are the participants supposed to respond to those ready commands, or those are warnings?
Those are warnings that just tell people what to expect. And the most important thing about it is the cadence. So a person that's calling a good line is going to call it basically like that. You have the line is ready. Then there's a pause. Ready on the right, pause. Ready on the left, pause. Ready on the firing line. Then there's a 3-second pause before the beep. And everybody can kind of count on that cadence. So you have the ability to, especially for timed and rapid fire. Rapid fire, if I didn't already mention it, you have 10 seconds to put 5 rounds on paper called twice. Now we'll get into that in a minute. But so the slow fire, the challenge is to try and be as steady as possible and put the hole as accurately as possible on the paper. And you're given all day to do it, which actually makes it a little bit harder. You get the opportunity to almost think too much. So let's see, slow fire, time fire, rapid fire. The time fire, you load 5 rounds. I'm sorry. The questions pop up. I'll wait for you to bring that to my attention. But the time fire, you load 5 rounds. Ready on the right, ready on the left, ready on the firing line. Beep. You have 20 seconds to put 5 rounds on paper, and then the person calling the line is going to say the following. The person is going to say, "Are there any alibis?" What's an alibi? An alibi is a failure for the gun to cycle around, or a dud, or something. Something happened, a misfire. And yes, there is a smartphone app. I have it.
Yeah. So just for everybody else, there's a smartphone app called Bullseye Timer that plays the commands in the proper cadence. And then the question and I didn't have it. I had it muted, so I forgot to mute myself. It sounds like the cadence might be the same in the Appleseed event. Yeah, I don't know if you.
Yeah, the smartphone app is pretty accurate. When I first started calling the line, the people who were more experienced said, "Yeah, you're rushing it a little bit," because I was excited. Then the person says, "Are there any alibis?" If there is an alibi, meaning that a gun failed, that person is supposed to immediately upon that. On slow fire, you have time to fix it. They won't ask about alibis on slow fire. On time fire and rapid fire, they'll ask if there are any alibis. If there's an alibi, that means the gun failed, and the person calling the line is going to go over and check. If your gun fails, you just set it down, stop, don't do a thing, because if you start fiddling with the gun, then they can't tell if the alibi is allowed or not allowed, because you've tampered with the evidence. If the gun did actually fail, then you get to shoot what's called an alibi string. And let's say that it failed on the 3rd round. So you got 3 rounds off, and the 3rd round failed, so you only have 2 holes on paper. So then now you have the opportunity to shoot an alibi string. Usually the way they do it is they're going to complete the line, so everybody's going to shoot their second 5 rounds, and then the person that had the alibi, they get to shoot an additional 5 rounds. And that means that unlike everybody else that supposedly has 10 holes on paper, you're going to have 12 holes on paper because you had 2 rounds and then a failure. Your best 2 will be eliminated and the other 10 will be counted. So that's how an alibi string works. So if the gun fails, you have an opportunity to redeem yourself, but you better keep shooting well. Now, how to score a target. What I did is I took a slow fire and I put 10 holes in it. The first thing you do if you're scoring a target is you count and make sure there's 10 holes. Let's say someone is a very, 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 very good shooter for just a moment, and then you see if they can, I don't know if you can, there's 3 holes. So they're missing 7. So that was really good shooting at the outset, and then they totally failed. So they would have down 70 right away because they're missing 7 shots. But let's say that they did get all 10 on paper. You start with 100. A lot of people will just start counting up. They go 10, and then they'll add 4, and then there's a couple of 6s, 3 6s. No, there's 2 6s and a 7, and so on. And they'll add them up. I find it's much easier to subtract. So I start with 100. I see that there's 2 bullseyes. I see that there's a hole that's bridging the 8 and the 9. If there's a hole that's bridging 2 circles, you get the number 9. Up here, there's a hole that is barely touching the ring of the inner circle. You get the 9. So you're always given the benefit of the doubt. And there are tools that they have that if it's very, very close, there are tools that they have that they can put in there and see if it's really, really touching the ring, or they use a little magnifying glass. But it's very important. Once you get a hold of your target, before you hand it to the person who's going to take it to be counted, don't mess with the holes. Don't touch the holes at all, because once the holes have been messed with, that compromises their ability to score the target.
So Rick, when you say you subtract, what do you subtract for the bullseyes? So on the 10, on those 2 10s, you do subtract 0?
Subtract 0, that's right. So let's go ahead and score this one. So I have 2 zeros, I have a 9, I have another 9, I'll call that a 9. I'll call that a 7, this is a 6 and a 6. I've got a 4 and I've got 1 outside. So I'm at 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94, 93, 92, 91. So that's 6 rings, so I subtract 4. And now I'm at 90. This takes me to 87, because another subtraction of 4. 87 minus 5 is 82. 82 minus 6, because I'm in the 4 ring, is, what am I at, 76? And then 10 off here, so 66. So that target is 66. Did I do the math right? Does that sound right?
You might have been off by 2, but nearly so. Nearly so.
The hanging Chad target, thank you. All right. So yeah, that gives you an idea of at least how I like to score it, because I think it's easier to count down.
Actually, there was a question before my snark. What happens if you shoot exactly in the same spot or very nearly, so it looks like just 1 hole? How do you account for that?
I've never seen the people will, if you're shooting well and people count 9 rounds, they're going to look for that hole that's slightly oblong. And I do see that a lot. I've never seen one where you can't find the 2 holes. I've seen one where they count 7 holes on paper, and one of them is obviously 2 and maybe 3. And a lot of times, if it's a good tight group, they go, that's got to be 3. So I have seen that happen.
So it's up to the judgment of the
it is, yeah,
referee.
The judgment of the people. Yeah, the person that and the way the scoring works is if you have the Bullseye League at the level that I'm at is an intercity league. So we have another town, another club in another town will send a Bullseye League to us, or we'll go to their club, and there'll be one member of each team scoring the targets. So the targets will go to one member, and that person will score the target, and then they'll pass it to someone from the other team, and that person will confirm the score. And if they have a question, they'll throw it back to the person that scored it, and they'll say, we take exception to this one. Now, the names of each shooter are written on the back of the target, and the scorer never looks at the back of the target. So they're scoring blind. They don't know whether they're scoring for their team or the opponent, the other team. So, and then once the score is determined and the score is approved, then they turn it over and you look at the back of it and see who it was that actually shot it.
So the only person who's got to worry about putting it in the same hole is Mike Ross, by the way. So I think we're.
Well, there's all.
That was bait, and he didn't take it.
All right. Now let's talk about equipment for a minute, and I will confess to you that I'm a little bit on the cheap side. I don't have the fanciest equipment. What I did do is I took the liberty of getting a couple of pictures of some of the more elite things that people do. And so if we can go jump back to the PowerPoint for just a moment, we'll look at that, and I can talk about pistols, magazines, ammo, eyewear, and travel cases. So can we jump back to the PowerPoint? Excellent. So let's take a look. This is, I don't know, hopefully you can see this. I tried to make it as big as possible. Here is a match that is scored between our league and, in this case, it was Braintree, which is a town south, north of us. I made the team. The way that works is anybody that shows up can shoot. And if you're on paper, that's great. You can get a score of 50, 60, 100, 200. It's like bowling. You know, most people come in and they bowl a 120, and that's fine. Everyone gets to play. The top 5 people become the team that is scored against the opponents. So if you score in the top 5, and then this particular one, I'm number 5 in the top 5. I spent most of my time in 4 or 5 because I'm pretty new to it, and I'm surrounded with decent people. So if you look at that, you'll see that the slow fire, the time fire, and the rapid fire is all tallied there, and then you're given a total. One of the things I forgot to mention on timed and rapid, and I unwisely drilled right through the X, but there's an X on the center of a rapid fire target. And if you get an X, that counts in your favor. So if someone has the exact same score as you, say someone scores a 94 on a time fire, and you score a 94 on a time fire, but they had 3 X's and you only had 2, they win. Or they would end up, that target would be considered a higher score. So the X's are the tiebreakers. That said, so you get your timed, your rapid, and your slow fire all put together, and then the 5 members of the team that are the high scorers are tallied together, and then your team is compared to the other team, and then one of you scores more. And that's how the Bullseye, that's how the match works.
Rick,
does that make sense? Yeah.
Rick, I have a quick question. What scoring does, what caliber does that scoring represent? Are these all 22 rimfire or?
This particular league, most Bullseye pistol is shot with 22. There is what's called center fire league, and center fire is anything 32 and above. And Pardini makes a 32 caliber pistol. It's very popular for that because obviously the lower the caliber, the better the recoil. And so a lot of people that shoot center fire matches shoot 32 caliber, but you can shoot 9. You can most people shoot 45 nice tricked out 1911s. What's pictured here is a Pardini pistol, which is a very popular pistol. There's a number of them. Smith & Wesson makes one called a Model 41, which is very popular. This one I see a lot. It's an Italian pistol, and it's very stable for bullseye shooting. It's a 22 caliber pistol. The magazine goes just forward to the trigger. Very manageable recoil, very, very soft trigger, just a couple of pounds. I think there's a minimum poundage on the trigger, right around 2 pounds. You can't go any lower than that.
Yeah, the Olympics have got rules for that. I know on the air pistols, they can't be any less than, I believe, 1 pound, but they can be 1 pound triggers, which is a really light trigger.
Oh, yeah. I was shooting someone's target rifle the other day, and I put my finger on the trigger, and the gun went off.
Yes. So you violated one of the rules right there.
I wasn't expecting it. I was following all the rules, and I had my finger on the frame until I was ready to shoot. It just shot before I was expecting it.
If we have time, I have an Olympic air pistol in a box behind me. I'll put it up on screen.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay. So at any rate, this is a Pardini. It gives you an idea of one of the fancier pistols. Mine isn't as fancy as that one, and we'll take a look at it in a little while. If we can go to the next slide. While I was thinking about, we can stay at that slide, but while I was thinking about pistols, a lot of people get a lot of magazines. I only have 2 magazines because I'm a cheapskate, but a lot of people will have at least 6 magazines so they can load for each stage, which is convenient, so you're not having to load your magazines between rounds or between stages. What you see here is a fancy set of eyewear that's used a lot of times for bullseye pistol. This is a particular type, but you get incarnations of that. What you see, the person here is right eye dominant. You can tell because you've got an oculus on the right, and then you've got a little cover on the left. The reason for the oculus is a lot of times people will dial down to a pinhole in order to get a clearer picture. And the best way I can think of to describe it is if you look at a professional photograph, and the foreground, the subject in the foreground is crystal clear, and in the background you see things are a little bit fuzzy, right? You with me? That happens when you open up the aperture of the camera and you create what's called a shallow depth of field. So, and the same thing happens to me when I go into, say, an indoor range. Of course, the pupil of my eye opens up, it dilates, and I'll have what's called a shallow depth of field. In other words, I might be able to see the gun, but I might not be able to see the target because I'll wear reading glasses in order to see the front sight of the gun if I'm using iron sights. So the way around that is to cheat the system. What you do is you create what's called a pinhole, and this little thing on the right, there's a little lever, and you can dial it down to a pinhole. And then when you look through the pinhole, you've essentially artificially made your pupil smaller. And in so doing, you've created a much deeper depth of field. So things tend to be more in focus. They won't be as bright, but they'll be very much in focus. And that's a real advantage for bullseye pistol and for red dot shooting. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But that's the reason that you have what you can create a pinhole for your dominant eye.
And it also is, it sort of levels the playing field for people with bad eyes because those, and I've got actually something, it turns out I've got all sorts of props that I can help with towards the end here. I've got little diopter things that go on my eyeglasses that give me that peephole. So the narrower that peephole is, the better your vision is. So it's a trick that people that wear glasses use. If you can narrow, you put a pinhole in a piece of paper and you wear glasses and you don't have your glasses, you can hold that pinhole up to your face and you'll be able to see more clearly because it's helping with that focus and the field of view and the depth of view and all that stuff. And there's a whole bunch of terms that I don't know how to describe it, but it helps. So
that's right. Yeah, very good. And then on the other side, you see there's a little white rectangle. The white rectangle is to cover the eye. The intention with Bullseye pistol is only use the muscles you need to use and don't use the muscles you don't need. And that includes your eyes. So if you can save strain on your non-dominant eye by not having to squint it closed, you can do so by using a little cover for it. And the reason the cover is white is you'd want about the same amount of light going into either eye, because wouldn't it be strange to have one eye, the pupil dilated, and the other eye kind of, you'd look like a crazy person. So what you want to do is try and have the pupils equal, but block the eye that you don't need and utilize the eye that you do need to best effect. And that's why you get eyewear like this. And I will show you my cheap version of that shortly. If we can go to the next slide. Then if you have money to burn, you can do all kinds of things. Here's a picture I found of a box in which you can store a multitude of pistols for competition. And there's a number of things that you can get that are to your advantage. A lot of these boxes have spotting scopes, so you can look downrange and see exactly where your holes are midstream on the targets.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries. There's all kinds of little tips and tricks and tools that you can put in there to help out. A lot of them are just frill. A lot of them are very useful, and I can go into that in a little bit. But I wanted to show you what a typical shooting case might look like. And then we can go into what I did and what a person can do just to start out. But you can always either build or purchase a shooting case and put all your gear in there. The important thing is that it's able to be locked during transportation, especially in Massachusetts. But it gives you a place to store just about anything you would want to go to the range for a bullseye competition.
Rick, Rick,
yes, sir.
another question that came up: are barrel weights permitted?
I'm not sure. I don't think there would be any reason not to use barrel weights. In 22 caliber, the Pardini is balanced in such a fashion that I think it would just be more stuff you have to lift. Keep in mind, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, is stance, but keep in mind you're shooting with one hand. So you want some weight to the gun, but you don't want to go crazy. And at 22 caliber, recoil isn't that much of a factor, especially with the Pardini, the balance the way it is. It has a relatively short barrel considering it's a precision competition pistol. Does that answer your question as best as I can? And I did see a comment flash by there that the Pardini does have barrel weights.
Yeah, I think a lot of the precision guns have the ability to add weight to the front of the barrel to stabilize the gun as you're aiming downrange. It does require you to, be able to hold that much extra weight for that much extra long. But
right. So how are we doing? Oh, we're doing good on time.
Yeah, you've got plenty of time. Take as much time as you need.
All right. So let's jump back to me, and we'll do a little bit of show and tell for people that might be interested. As I said, I started out with a revolver. I showed up with just regular reading glasses because I wanted to be able to see the front sight clearly, and I'm an older person, so reading glasses was appropriate. I shot as best as I could, and then I learned about the little diopter. I learned about blocking the other eye. So I created my own glasses, and these had their regular safety glasses. Then I just took another pair and cut them up and made a little diopter there. You can kind of see it, and blanked out the other ones. And the crazy thing about it was it looked really creepy. And they still let me shoot.
And they let you shoot.
And they still let me shoot. So yeah, I mean, it's like, they just didn't say much. So the point I'm trying to make is it's a friendly crowd. I found that it was very easy to get welcomed into the Bullseye pistol community. So if a person is nervous about it at all, don't be. People love to have newbies come in and get to show them the ropes. So that's one thing. Then what I did is I improved it. I was still a cheapskate, and so I did go out and I got some actually cheaters. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see there's I think there you can see the cheater glass. So what's nice about that is I can look down and see to load my magazines, because as I said before, I only had 2 magazines, so I have to load them between strings. But I found that you can go, and Ed, this might have been something that you were talking about, or you might have a fancier one, because there are ones that are stick-on diopters.
There's stick-on diopters that go right on the eyeglasses. I don't know if you'll turn the light down there.
Yeah. I don't know if you can. I think we're both holding up the same thing.
We're holding. I think you bought exactly the same thing that I bought. I'm going to turn off my background. Yeah. They are from there.
iPal.
There you go.
iPalusa.com. I found them at the local.
Exactly the same ones I have.
Yeah, I found them, and you just lick and stick.
Yeah, no, you don't even have to lick them. They're electrostatic. And then the thing I got.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, I used again, being cheap, I used a piece of Scotch magic tape, and just it doesn't. It allows the.
I'm gonna get it back to you. Hold on.
All right.
There you go.
So there's the diopter on one side, and then my non-dominant eye, I just a little piece of Scotch tape, and I just stuck it onto the frame like that, and that did the trick. So
and that occludes that left eye, or the non-dominant eye enough to.
It does. It's like if I close my dominant eye, I've got the light, but it's I don't see any anything of substance.
For the defensive shooters out there, we're always keeping both eyes open anyway, so this ought to come right naturally for folks.
I was, and actually for IDPA, I did that for a while as well, because I wanted to keep my other eye open, and I just trying to train the dominant eye to be focused. So on the dominant side, I would have reading glasses, and on this side, I was using tape for a while. But that's not Bullseye, that's IDPA. So that's what I currently use. I just went and got basically Cheater. You can get these on Amazon. Cheaters, which is if you need reading glasses. If you don't, then just get safety glasses. You can put the diopter on your dominant eye, and I shoot left-handed, and I'm right eye dominant, so that's why the diopter is so far over. I have to bring the gun over to my eye. But that's what I use currently, and it works just fine.
Yeah, iPalusa.com for anybody that wants to get those. They are pretty slick. They flop right on your eyeglasses.
Yeah, and you get 2 of them, so you can share with friends.
Yeah,
one that I'm not using.
I want to show the Olympic pistol real quick, because it's got some of the things in common, so that they can see that, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, by all means.
Let me turn my video back on. Let me put my video back here. So if you shoot Olympic air pistol, this is a single stroke pneumatic, so just ignore it. But this shelf
Can
here.
You bring it down a little bit? We don't have the. It's hard to see. You don't have a lot of front light there.
Yeah, it's good. So this shelf keeps your wrist in position, and you can get Harrod grips and whatnot for your 1911s or for whatever 22 you have that'll replicate this, but it moves. You loosen the screws here, and it moves up and down. So this gun fits my hand as close as it can without me taking a Dremel to the grip. So that's what this shelf on the bottom is for, is to sort of lock your. This is really bloody uncomfortable. Lock your hand into position where your regular Smith & Wesson Model 41 with its stock grips don't do that.
Yeah, and actually I have a Ruger Mark III that we can look at that's similar.
There you go.
And I may as well jump over to that now.
There's a question before you get to the pistol. Were those SSP glasses?
Those.
Or, I'm sorry, SSP classes? I'm not sure. This is Lonnie's question.
No, SSP. I know the SSPs. The SSPs have the, you can get with either the readers at the bottom or the top. These are not SSPs. I think they were just, trying to see if there's, oh, wait a minute, here we go. GTV. It's like 1.5 magnification with the, it's just safety glasses with the magnification at the bottom. The SSPs are really awesome. I have a couple of pairs that I use that have the magnification at the top. I use a higher magnification in lower light and lower magnification in outdoors, but these are not them. But I think you can get the SSPs with the magnification at the bottom.
They actually, Rick, they actually make them so if you buy the set, it comes with top or bottom. It also comes with a blackout lens for your non-dominant eye.
Okay. I prefer the tape because of the whole thing with the pupil, trying to keep the pupils the same size. And I don't have any documentation to back that up. I just think it's less stressful to have about the same amount of light going into both eyes. That said, let's look at the pistol, which I put here. So first of all, this is a Ruger Mark III. It's got what I call the weed whacker that goes through the barrel and out of the chamber here, indicating that it's empty. There is nothing there's no magazine in there. So the gun, I think hopefully we could all agree it's empty. That said, I'm going to take the weed whacker out. Ed was referring to the grip. This is a left-handed grip because I am left-handed. So you see it comes around, I can grip it like this. And since it's a one-handed grip, the thumb has a nice thumb rest up at the top. I'm going to switch this around, go the other way. So you can see this side. You can see what the grip looks like. It's not quite as fancy as Ed's. I think Ed had a little cutout for something that was going on up here. But essentially, and then the shelf at the bottom locks my wrist in place. So your hand is essentially locked onto the pistol like that. You see how it comes down nice and flat into here, so your arc of movement, and if you're not familiar with arc of movement, that's the inevitable movement that a human body makes unless you're dead. So being that we're alive, the arc of movement is the big struggle that you have with Bullseye pistol, especially on slow fire. And you're trying to minimize the arc of movement. It will never totally go away. But one of the ways you minimize it is to have a grip that fits your particular hand. And that's what's going on here. Does that make sense?
That's good. Question. Obviously, an aftermarket grip. Could you tell us where one could get a grip like that for an MK series?
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to think what this one was. It wasn't even that expensive. It was like $40.
Harriet makes them, but I don't know if that's a Harriet.
Yeah, that might be a Harriet. I did cut this away a little bit with a Dremel tool here because I wanted to have a little easier access to the bolt to be able to. This is to drop the bolt forward. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a Harriet.
Since I was left-handed.
Yeah. So you didn't trick it out with a special slide release. You just got the stock.
No, I just kept the stock one in there. So I just do that and it snaps forward.
I got someone in chat saying it looks like a Harriet National model. So
okay, that's quite possible. It's not heavily modified. It's just a little bit. Oh, the slide came down on my finger and gave me a little cut. Let me throw a piece of tape on that real quick. Hang on a second.
Lonnie, do you want to give him any advice on how to, stop the bleed?
Yeah, there you go.
Elevate.
Perfect.
Elevate. And then hold your nose. No, that's for nose. No, never.
Just in case anybody wonders, that fine gentleman speaking is Lonnie Weissman, who taught our Stop the Bleed class a couple weeks ago, and did the panel for Stop the Bleed, the sequel. So Rick, I told you I could do commercial breaks. It's fine.
Oh, no. I actually stole the piece of tape off of the glasses.
Oh, there you go. They're dual purpose.
Oh yeah. We improvise, adapt, and overcome. Oh, I saw that. Tourniquet around the neck. Thank you. I'll see if I can up my game a little bit. Okay, the other thing that's on this that's a little bit unique is you can shoot either iron sights or you can shoot what's called red dot. And red dot is allowed for everything but real high. I think the real high end, the Olympic, I think it's specifically iron sights. But for most other categories, You're allowed to shoot red dot. It doesn't give you a real advantage, except the dot is very accurate. Wherever you point the dot, if it's calibrated correctly, is where the bullet goes.
Are they allowed to be magnified?
No, there's not really any magnification. And again, there's no advantage to magnification, because even if you made it bigger, then that's just going to exacerbate you seeing the arc of movement. So as long as you can get the dot where you want it to be and keep it there, or at least get the bullet to go down range when the dot is where it's supposed to be, that's when you get a good score. I'm going to go ahead and turn on this thing and see if we can see the red dot in here. Let me send.
Yeah,
there it is.
Perfect.
Can you see
right
it?
There? Perfect. Beautiful.
Got it. All right, so that's a very bright red dot. You can actually have it a lot dimmer. You want it the minimum amount of brightness, because the brighter it is, of course, the more it'll flare. And then if you looked at it through the peephole, it would be very, very concise with no fuzzy edges. And so you'd have a very clean dot. All right. So that's a red dot. Let me get this turned off. There we go.
Now we're going to quiz you on what kind of red dot it is. Who made it?
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
This is Ultra dot 30 millimeter. So it's 30 millimeter diameter. Not a very fancy one. I think it was like $100. And it bolts right onto the top. You have a rail that goes on top of the Mark III, and then you just bolt this onto the rail. If you didn't want to do if you wanted to do iron sights, which a lot of people do, you just leave the original iron sights that are on there. And on a Mark III, and a lot of these pistols, the iron sights are calibratable. While I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna put the weed whacker back in. By the way, the weed whacker came from Tractor Supply. It's literally a weed whacker, and you get them. This is Tractor Supply, and you can have an almost endless supply. I know they don't have the Liberal Gun Club logo on them, but they're fun to give away to your friends, and you can make a lot of friends at Bullseye if someone's missing a weed whacker, and you can give them one of yours.
And we do sell them on the site, so.
You sell the barrel blocks that have the Liberal Gun Club logo on them, correct?
The flags that go down the barrel, they're just like a weed whacker.
Yeah.
They've got a little flag on the end of it. Yep.
Yeah. Well, until the Liberal Gun Club ones catch on, the weed whackers are available at Tractor Supply. Tricks, fun things to know and tell. First of all, let me talk a little bit about what it looks on the outside. When you're shooting, and I'm just going to, I think I'll just pick up the cert again because it's not as heavy. It's essentially you're holding the gun at arm's length away. You don't want to be too stiff. You want to hold it as though you're shaking hands. And then when you're ready to shoot, you just squeeze, or press the trigger, I think is a more appropriate term. And then hopefully your arc of movement is such that the trigger brake happens at the same point as the red dot is pointed where it's supposed to.
Are you locking your elbow? Are you locking your elbow?
I'm not really. I'm almost, but not quite. What I tend to do is I tend to push the gun a little bit towards the target. The traditional bullseye stance is a little bit back. You'll find that, first of all, the non-dominant hand is either put in the pocket. Most people put them in their front pocket, whether if they're right-handed, then their front left pocket.
Drop the camera down like 2 degrees so we can see your whole torso.
Sure. So can I do that?
You were able to the other day.
Let me see.
Yeah,
I can't. Close. I don't know if it'll bend down. Will it?
Don't worry about it. That was close enough.
I know what I did. I tightened it. Hang on a second.
We did do our tech test.
Here, I'll do that.
I promise. It was close enough. There you go.
There we go. Oh, you know what I did do? Actually turned down my volume by accident.
We can still hear you.
There. Well, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, well,
all right. So a lot of, I tend to, you can see it? Oh, okay,
yep.
Good. I tend to put my hand right here just below my belly button. I have a reason that I do that. I can talk about it shortly. Most people just put their hand in their pocket. So that's the non-dominant hand. Just get it out of the way. Make sure that it's not creating extraneous movement in your body. And then the traditional bullseye stance is people tend to cantilever a little bit, just like they tell you not to do when you're target shooting a higher caliber. Is, you know, when you're shooting a higher caliber, you want to move forward into it. Whether, you know, if you're like isosceles, you want to move forward into it. With bullseye, and especially the low recoil, you're going to actually tip back a little bit. That's traditional. I tend not to do that, and it's just my own personal thing, because there's a lot of things you can play with, and it becomes very personal to your own. But the traditional stance you'll normally see is tip back a little bit, and you'll have the weight on your back foot. And so the non-dominant hand. The other thing that's important to think about would be foot placement. And the way you determine that, if you wouldn't want to stand completely sideways, or let's say completely sideways like that, because that's too much strain on your shoulder. And you wouldn't want to stand facing forward, because likewise, you're not using your muscles most effectively. What you want to do is to be kind of at an angle. So how do you determine that angle? So what I would do is you would just take a guess at it and say, well, I'm gonna think of about like a 30-degree angle. And then you close your eyes and put your arm up to where it's really comfortable. You can move like this, kind of find out where it's really comfortable, where it's right in the middle between strain here and strain here, right? And then close your eyes and then look at where you think the target is and open your eyes. And if your hand is pointed at the target, then your foot placement is good. If you find that your foot placement is, say, 20 degrees, and you find that that sweet spot on your shoulder, and you open it, and the hand is too far to the right, let's say, for example, then move your feet counterclockwise a little bit. I'm assuming all right-handed here, and then try the same exercise, and just find out where the minimum amount of tension is for your shoulder, and make that your foot placement for single-handed shooting. Does that make sense?
It does. Grip strength on the gun itself, right? So we've got in the defensive shooting class, we've got this sort of notion of you squeeze the gun until it starts to shake, and then you relax until it stops shaking, and then that's the right grip strength on the pistol. Are there differences when you're doing this sort of contrived, slightly cantilevered back, one-handed, hand in the pocket, like are you gripping the gun differently if you're as if you were doing it from a defensive shooting position?
The defensive shooting, I tend to grip with both hands very strong. Yeah. With the bullseye, what I want to do is think about isolating my trigger finger, so I'll grip as tightly as I need to in order to feel that I can isolate the trigger finger. And a lot of times that's kind of a C-clamp grip. I've played with that, but I don't want to grip it so strong that it's creating any unnecessary tension. You're gonna, again, I'm gonna harken back to use exactly the right amount of muscle that you need to, no less, no more. My starting point is like, how do I shake hands? I don't shake too firmly, I don't shake too soft, right in the middle. I'll start with the grip that I would use to shake hands if we still shook hands anymore. And then I would, I'm going to place my finger on the trigger and try and leave my grip completely agnostic, so to speak, or not involved in the squeezing of the trigger, and then just press the trigger back until I get the trigger break. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was just sort of thinking that through, because that's good fundamentals and good grip is always the thing in a class, but in holding this Olympic gun, especially if you've got that floor plate that's bracing it up against your, locking your wrist in place, I'm actually finding that I have to hold. I don't grip the gun nearly as hard. I'm mostly just, the gun's attached to my hand because my hand is locked in the gun, and all I'm doing is actuating the trigger. So
you're
that's
actuating your wrist and then trying to get independent motion out of your trigger finger.
Exactly. So instead of gripping the gun and using and I'd have to turn my video on to show that, using my hands to hold the gun and stabilize the gun, because in defensive shooting, you're holding and stabilizing, but in bullseye shooting, it's almost like I'm not gripping the gun at all. I'm letting the gun grip me and I'm touching the trigger.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair assessment. So that is, we've touched on natural point of aim, which you've determined by finding the sweet spot in your shoulder. We touched on the arc of movement, which is the inevitable movement. And a lot of people, they say, well, instead of trying to eliminate, which you can't, the arc of movement, instead of minimizing it, why not control it? I had one person that shot at an Olympic level. He does his arc of movement in a figure 8. And he just lets when you pick up the gun and they say, ready on the right, ready on the left, a lot of times for timed and rapid, I bring it up when they say ready on the left. Because there's a time when the gun is still moving, and then there's a time when it's gonna settle, and if you wait too long, it's gonna start moving again. And so when it settles, you want to have kind of want to have a say-so in what the arc of movement is. And this guy would do a figure 8, and then as it would settle, he would make the figure 8 smaller, and then try and time it so the trigger break happened at the point at which the figure 8 was crossing the bullseye. And he was regularly shooting very high, but of course he practices a lot in order to get that arc of movement under his control.
Are you raising the gun between shots? So take a shot, lower the gun, raise the gun, take a shot, lower the gun, or are you keeping the gun?
For slow fire only.
For slow fire only.
Okay. So for time fire, remember you have 20 seconds. So you're going to, the cadence for time fire is you bring it up, ready on the left, right, ready on the left, ready on the firing line. You wait the 3 seconds. Then you hear a beep. I have 20 seconds. That's actually a lot of time. So I'll let the first round go in the first second or two. And then I try and do a cadence of 2 seconds, 3 seconds. At the end, after like 3 seconds or so, if you times 5, you're at 15 seconds. You have time to spare. Most people finish in 10. Most people shoot it too fast. Then for rapid fire, you want to get your first shot off as quickly as possible without jerking the trigger. And then you have a cadence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have 2 seconds to spare. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk, we're almost at the top of the hour. I'm going to, one other little piece about Bullseye, and I alluded to it at the very beginning of the class, which was the whole thing about ego. And the thing that's crazy about Bullseye is it's a real challenge for a person to be in the moment. That's what I like about it best. I compare it to Tai Chi. If you look at Tai Chi, which is the slow moving meditation that you see the Chinese masters do, it happens very slowly. What's interesting about Tai Chi is every movement has martial application. And I think it's the same with Bullseye. You have to be in the moment. You're trying to steady your mind, keep it in the moment. And it's a lot of times, I'll be, the process I might go through. It's like, okay, now is my foot placement right? The person says, ready on the right. And I'm shooting time fire, and this is running through my head. I'm settling my mind, ready on the left. I'll bring up the gun. I'll settle in. I'll let my shoulders settle, whether I'm tipped back or tipped forward. I want to get in the right position. I've inhaled. I exhale about halfway. I find a soft place for my breathing to stop. Ready on the firing line. I'm waiting the 1. I'm waiting the 2. I'm waiting the 3 seconds. It's like, wow, I think I have to burp. And that happens. And then your first shot, it's off the paper. So the real challenge is, can I keep my mind in the moment? Can I literally be concerned with that first shot, and then after the first shot, forget it and be concerned about the second shot and the third shot and the fourth shot, and let the gun settle and let it be. And don't be personally invested in it, but be incredibly impersonally invested in it. Do the best job you can without worrying about it. And that's what I like the best about Bullseye, is it really gives me an opportunity to learn how much I can focus. I'll give one last thing that's interesting to me. When I do slow fire and I'll look at the target afterwards, if I shoot especially well at slow fire, it's almost a curse. You're like, oh, wow, I'm doing great. And then it all falls apart because it's almost being complimented goes right to your head and it messes with you. So it's very, very difficult to try and be humble and be good. And that's the part that I really, really enjoy about Bullseye the best. I'm going to wrap up with a quote by a fellow named John Dreyer, who runs a website called bullseyepistol.com. And I encourage you to visit. It's my go-to spot for learning more about Bullseye Pistol. It approaches it from a lot of different ways. And he wrote this, adapted from Kanjuro Shibata, who's a sensei, who's a Zen archer. And Dreyer adapted what Kanjuro said, which reads like this. If you look at it from the outside, shooting seems to be just a game. Raising the pistol and shooting at the target resembles a test of skill, but shooting is so much more than just a sport. To discover the true nature of shooting, one has to look inside to cut through and go beyond any kind of preoccupation, whether it be worry, hope, doubt, or fear. Although the actual forms of competitive shooting have changed over and again, and the equipment has become more sophisticated, the essence of true shooting practice always remains the same. It is the epitome of traditional Zen standing meditation. So that's my shtick on Bullseye.
Outstanding.
And do you have any questions?
I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Mike Ross here. Two questions, actually. One, how important is ammunition? What kind of variance do you see between? And a second one, if I may, in our informal league, we noticed that the timed fire groups are generally smaller than the slow fire for a lot of people when they first start.
Yeah, I found that too, because people tend not to overthink it. Well, and keep in mind, the target is a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah.
But then people are not trying to overthink it. A lot of times they will, they'll shoot a group that's smaller on the timed fire than the slow fire, because each shot becomes incredibly important. And then especially if you look in the scope and you see what the last shot was, it messes with you for the next shot.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that's kind of fun to try and overcome. How disinvolved can you be and yet shoot well?
And the ammo?
The ammo, a lot of the people, you can spend a ton of money on ammo. I know a lot of the people in my level are shooting the CCI standard, which is 1,072 feet per second. The CCI tends to be a little wider than some of the other stuff. The other stuff that I've shot is a Gila, which tends to be a little waxier. So you have to make sure your gun is clean. Which reminds me, one other thing that I always bring with me is a little, one of these things to clean the gun. If I get an Alibi string, so the first thing I'll do when I get the opportunity is run this down the barrel, just in case I've got too much sponge down the barrel. So it's nice to have that available right at the bench. So that's a fun thing to keep with you for Bullseye. The other thing, while I'm thinking about it, you think about ammo. And this became, I don't know whether there's a lot of value to this or not. This is just a gun oil. I think this particular one is what's called Magic Miracle Oil, whatever it is. It's a car oil. But I use it. I put it on the head of the first bullet in each string that I'm shooting. Just a little drop of there, and that tends to lubricate the first round going down the chamber and the ones that follow. And I'll do that for every string. Any other comments on ammo?
No, I think we're good. I mean, we're at 5 minutes past the hour, so we're at exactly 1 hour. I went ahead and found all my crap for my glasses, so I can show everybody what a real idiot looks like.
Okay.
Here, let me do that for everybody, just because.
Sure.
See?
There you go.
Isn't that nice?
So the flip down block.
And you look like the Borg.
There
That's
you
your
go.
best look, Ed.
That's my best look. But yeah, so it's a lot of the same
It
stuff
beats
you
this
might
one.
do. Yeah, there you go. Well, I don't know if it beats that or not. It's pretty good.
I like yours, Rick. I think yours are a better look.
Yeah, his are probably a better look.
Okay.
But yeah, it's for a while back I thought I was going to be a precision shooter. That did not turn out to be the case. But I bought all the stuff for it, so I got all the stuff. So it looks like I got the same stuff you did. So that's awesome.
Similar.
So thanks so much, Rick. I'm going to go ahead and unmute whoever's left. There's about 25 people left. I think we were up to I don't know, 40 some odd people.
All right, good.
So well done. I'm going to unmute everybody. Everybody can say thank you or something rude if you care, but then you'll.
Thank you, Rick. Excellent.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
So I want to thank everybody for coming. It was awesome.
Nice job, Rick.
All right.
I'm going to mute everybody again because there's somebody with a television on. And we'll get this up on YouTube as soon as Zoom decides that I'm allowed to download it. So once again, thank you so much, and everybody have a great night, and we'll see you on the forums, on the Facebook, or on the Discord server, or in the case of Mike Ross, all of the above. And thanks so much. This is, I think, good God, I think this is our 15th one of these. So thank you very much. Next week, we've got Advanced Reloading with Scott Richardson on Tuesday. And on Thursday, we're going to bring all of the actual firearms instructors online, and we're going to do alternative training aids. So if you can't get to the range, what can you do? Rick's got a cert gun behind him there with a Mantis X attached to it. You might as well show that to him just to give a preview. And we're going to specifically talk about these two gizmos with all of the folks that have been teaching the classes. Scott Richardson did the IDPA class. We got Alessandro Padovani, who's taught a bunch of the defensive pistol stuff. Mike Ross, who's been asking some of the questions, did the intro to range safety. I'll be on there as moderating, and we're going to get Rick on there as well because he's also an instructor. And we're going to talk about, what can we do when we can't get to a range, which ought to be useful above and beyond simply the pandemic. So thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next week. And we are off.